Hi, students. Now we're going to talk about the second part of the fallacies lecture, where we're going to focus on insufficiency and unacceptability. So this is part 2. We're going to start with fallacies of insufficient evidence. So sufficiency has to do with a combination of all of the premises together having enough evidence to offer the correct support to the truth of the conclusion. And remember, whatever the conclusion is, the amount or the weight or the number of reasons will depend on the force of the conclusion. So if they do not have enough force to support the conclusion, the argument is insufficient, and additional relevant acceptable premises are required to supply the appropriate bearing, the right type of reason, and or the correct number of reasons. So first we have missing evidence fallacies. We have appeal to ignorance first. So this fallacy occurs when the premises of an argument mention that nothing has been proved or disproved about a certain subject, and the conclusion makes a definite assertion about what is not proven or disproven. Okay, so what it's trying to do, I'll give you an example. No one has disproven that homeopathy works, thus it must work. Okay, or you could do it the opposite. You could say nobody has proven that homeopathy works, thus it must not work. Okay. In this case, look for epistemic language. Epistemic means about knowledge, about proof or evidence. Okay. So that's appeal to ignorance. By appealing to what is not the case, you can't go to what is the case. Next is a weak generalization. This is simply an inductive generalization in which there is a reasonable likelihood that the sample is not representative. The missing evidence results from either A, insufficient sample size, or B, unrepresentative data. So, for example, the college surveyed their 31,000 students on how good the dorm food was. 80% of the 25 male students who returned the survey loved pizza night. Conclusion: students at the college love pizza night. Okay, next we have different types of weak causal inferences. The first one is called post hoc, ergo propter hoc. After it, therefore because of it. Only because event 2 follows closely in time to event 1 must cause event 2. So this goes from token level events, event 1 occurs, then event 2 occurs, to saying, well, that means that a type level, events of type 1 cause events of type 2. Okay, so I've illustrated this with E1. Event 1 leads to event 2, therefore it must cause it. Okay, and leads to here, I'm meaning just in time. One, it occurs, and then the other occurs. Indicators of post hoc reasoning is words like followed by, then, before, after, since, and immediately. So any language that means event language. And also use of Mill's method of difference. For example, the check I'd been waiting for came on the same day I wore my lucky beanie. So if I want my check to come, I must wear my lucky beanie. Next is the slippery slope fallacy. This purports an alleged chain reaction with insufficient evidence that that chain reaction is likely. This operates on both our loss aversion and appeal to avoid negative consequences. Sufficiency requires that every link in the chain must be supported. So here we go. It goes event 1 leads to event 2, event 2 leads to event 3, event 3 to event 4, and event 4 to something we really don't want to have happen. And some it could be as wild as the end of the world as we know it, the fall of Western civilization, whatever they want to argue that this is unlikely chain reaction. So here is an argument from Clarence Darrow. And I want you to plot out the downhill steps of this slippery slope argument, okay? If today you can take a thing like evolution and make it a crime to teach it in the public school, tomorrow you can make it a crime to teach it in the private schools. And the next year you can make it a crime to teach it in the church. At the next session, you may ban books and the newspapers. Soon you may set Catholic against Protestant and Protestant against Protestant and try to foist your own religion upon the minds of men. And after a while, Your Honor, it is a setting of man against man and creed against creed until with flying banners and beating drums, we are marching backward to the glorious ages of the 16th century. So try this out, just figure out how many different steps that were each unsupported does Darrow give you here. So here's my analysis. So first we go, event one is you make it a crime to teach in the public school. He's claiming this will lead to make it a crime to teach in the private schools. Ask yourself if that's a reasonable step. Even today, is that even possible that that would be true? If you make it a crime to teach it in private schools, so you can make it a crime to teach it in a church. Then you're going to set religious persons against each other and no freedom from religion. Then man against man, creed against creed. So for each step, ask yourself, what evidence is given to show the likelihood of this sequence of events? Next is oversimplified cause. A causal web is, so often we like to think about things as like causal chains, but chains aren't actually the way causality works in the natural world. Instead, it's a causal web with many necessary and altogether sufficient forces and conditions to get something to occur. So a causal web brings about a certain effect, but only one of these effects is argued as producing that. So the words that are indicators include the cause, main cause, and whenever you see Mill's method of agreement. So here's an example of an oversimplified cause. The main force driving this shift to the left among the American voting public is probably rising income inequality. According to Pew, there has recently been a sharp increase in the percentage of Americans who agree with the statement, the rich get richer while the poor get poorer. So they're saying that the main force driving this shift to the left is probably rising income inequality. But there are probably many reasons for the driving of a shift to the left in the public. So identify likely contributing causes to why people may shift to the left politically other than rising income inequality. And why does the evidence given that people agree with this statement cited not support the causal inference that this is why they voted left? Finally, non-causa pro causa. This is a general term for many types of false cause. This occurs when what is taken to be a cause is not really the cause at all, and it's not merely succession that the conclusion is based on. Indicators include claims to correlation, duration terms, and process terms. This may use Mill's method of concomitant variation. So common types of non-causa is when somebody mistakes necessary for sufficient conditions. They ignore common cause and claim that something caused by one thing. Okay, so say two things are caused by one of initial causal force, and they mistake that the two things that are caused by that common cause are causally related themselves. It can mistake cause for effect. Here's an example of a non-causa pro causa. Defense attorney Ellis Rubin argued Zamora's constant exposure to TV crime shows was responsible for disease in his mind and impairing his behavior controls. Without the influence of television, there would not have been any crime. Next, when we introduced disease testing policies, we found that the rates of disease were much higher than originally reported. To avoid similar increases in disease, we should avoid testing our population. So next are fallacies of unacceptability. So we want to make sure that we understand what counts as an unacceptable premise. And again, we're borrowing from T. Edward Dahmer's Rules of Rational Discussion, a very beat up book here. Okay. Sorry, his book, Attacking Faulty Reasoning, but this is his basis, is Rules of Rational Discussion. So first, an unacceptable premise is something that contradicts evidence of well-established claims, or is inconsistent with personal knowledge or observations, or contradicts other premises, or offers a questionable claim that is not defended adequately, or it could be one that is linguistically confusing, or one that is no different from the conclusion that it's used to support, or finally, one that is based on a highly questionable assumption. So those are all types of unacceptable premises. So first we want to talk about unwarranted assumptions. And we'll talk about false dilemma, also called false dichotomy. This is simply a disjunctive syllogism. And because it's a disjunctive syllogism, as it stands, it's a valid argument, but it's not a sound argument. It does not have acceptable premises. So this is disjunctive syllogism with the unacceptable disjunction that ignores obvious alternatives. For example, either we prevent women from accessing schools and parks, or the moral fabric of society will disintegrate. The choice should be obvious. Next is a fallacy of accident. This is a rule of thumb, rule of principle, which is applied as if it has no known exceptions when it does. Okay, so this is just a misapplication of a principle by using it for its well-known exception. This is an example. Speeding is legally wrong, so that fire truck, the one with blaring horns and flashing lights, is acting illegally. Before I discuss the next thing, I want to explain to you how predication works, okay? So remember, predicate phrase is what makes a claim about the subject phrase. Predication can come in two forms. You can have distributive or collective predication. For distributive predication, the quality applies to each and every individual member of the set being discussed. So if I said Canada Goose jackets are easy to put on, that talks about each and every Canada Goose jacket is easy to put on. For collective predication, the quality applies to the group as a whole altogether. So if I say Canada Goose jackets are ubiquitous, meaning you see them everywhere, then that's talking about the collection as a whole, not any individual one. Okay, so when you make a predicated claim, you make a distributive predication or you make a collective predication. So in fallacy of composition, the attribute is wrongly transferred from parts to whole. For example, each member of this philosophy class has a social security number. Therefore, the philosophy class itself must have a social security number. Here I have something, if you want to watch, that's a YouTube video with a similar fallacy of composition. Next is fallacy of division. This attribute, the attribute is wrongly transferred from the whole to the parts. For example, the United States is 16% atheist, therefore Kara, who is American, must be 16% atheist. Next is a weak analogy. So an analogy is weak when it relies on irrelevant qualities, has few tokens and or few types between which the analogy holds, and offers a sparse basis for comparison of qualities. Again, if you just see an analogy in your fallacies question, it's a weak analogy, okay? So here the indicators are the same for analogies, is similar to, is like, as compared to, those words. So, for example, raising a child is like growing a tree. Sometimes violent things, such as cutting off branches, have to be done to force the tree to grow straight. Similarly, corporal punishment must be inflicted on children to force them to develop properly. Next are fallacies of linguistic confusion. You could have the fallacy of equivocation. The conclusion depends on a shift in meaning of a word or phrase. For this, look for repetition of the same word, words with multiple meanings. So, like you have one word or mouth sound, like right, and then it means multiple things. Ignorance of the use mention distinction. And this one, what you're doing is you might be quoting somebody, but it sounds like you're saying what that person you are quoting said instead of you quoting them. So that's an example of use mention distinction. Here's an example for equivocation. Lexus automobiles can go 140 miles per hour. Thus, I can speed without getting mine pulled over. Okay, another video to watch. And this one is Jesse and Chester in Dude, Where's My Car? And they're going back and forth. And if you watch it, I want you to figure out, how does the owner solve the ambiguity of use mention? And this Jesse says, sweet, what about mine? Dude, what does mine say? Sweet, what about mine? They're each telling the other one what the word on their back says, but the person doesn't know they're not using the word sweet or using the word dude. They're instead mentioning it. So that's what the use mention distinction is. Please watch the video and figure out how the owner solves the ambiguity. For fallacy of amphiboly, the conclusion depends on the wrong interpretation of syntactically ambiguous statement. So it's the arrangement of the words that causes the ambiguity. Amphiboles can arise in different ways, such as ambiguous reference of pronouns and by misplaced modifiers. Here's an example. One morning, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How he got into my pajamas, I'll never know. Headlines and ads can be easily misconstrued. Which best characterizes the linguistic confusion? Equivocation, where it has more than one meaning, or amphiboly, the structure of the sentence makes it confusing. Here we go. First headline, children cook and serve grandparents. Second, marijuana issued, sent to joint committee. Third, stolen painting found by tree. And finally, Republicans turned off by size of Obama's package. Watch this clip here between 11 and 15. Which fallacy of linguistic confusion does Peter make when he surmises this? Kerosene is fuel, Red Bull is fuel, kerosene is Red Bull. And remember, harken back to laws of logic. Which logical relation is falsely applied here? Reflexivity, symmetry, or transitivity? Next is begging the question. This rests on treating inadequate premises as if they are adequate. You can have circular reasoning. This is when a chain of inferences ultimately depend on one another. For example, Doc Martens are the most popular shoes on Oxford campus because they are the best shoes. We know this because they are the most popular. Next is complex question. This embeds an unwarranted presumption into a question. The most famous one is, have you stopped beating your wife? If you answer no, you're answering as if the presumption is accurate. Sorry, I'm having a little asthma. You can also have question begging arguments. These may leave out key premises, and that is what needs to be in to have the justification and the argument work. Or the premise and the conclusion may not move the argument forward because they simply state the same thing. For example, people who lack humility have no sense of beauty, because if a person has a sense of beauty, they have humility. Or people deserve complete domain over their own body. Abortion is morally permissible. Or every fetus is a person with full moral rights to live. Abortion is morally impermissible. These two sort of standard abortion arguments just fail to have the key premises that need to be there to just fully justify these claims. So identify these fallacies. Where do you hide your stash? Number 2, either you go corporate or you make no money. It is just a waste of your education to not make money. Oh, sorry, I went too fast. No one has ever proven the connection between autism and EHD conclusively. You must conclude there is no connection. The First Amendment to the Constitution prevents the government from interfering with free exercise of religion. The liturgical practice of the religion of eternal enlightenment involves human sacrifice. Therefore, it would be wrong for the government to interfere with this religious practice. On our first date, George had his hands all over me, and I found it nearly impossible to keep him in his place. A week ago, Tom gave me that stupid line of how, in order to go for me to prove my love, I had to spend the night with him. Men are all alike. All any of them want is sex. Next, Kit said he was interviewed for a job drilling oil wells in the supervisor's office. The supervisor must have an awfully dirty office. Next, we don't dare let animal rights activists get their foot in the door. That means no more chicken Kiev or prime rib. Next, it will be worms and insects. This will lead to the decimation of our agricultural industry. The starvation of the human race will follow closely behind. Identify this fallacy. Picasso is the greatest artist of the 20th century. We know this because all of the art critics have described him this way. These art critics are correct in their assessment because they have a more keenly developed sense of appreciating than an average person. This is true because it takes a more keenly developed sense of appreciation to realize that Picasso is the greatest artist of the 20th century. 9, Pauline said that after she had removed her new mink coat from the shipping container, she threw it in the trash. Some people have no appreciation for fine furs. 10, the earthquake occurred right after Avengers began on TV. To prevent further earthquakes, no one should broadcast Avengers. 11, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett give millions of dollars in charitable causes every year. It must be the case that all wealthy people give huge amounts to charity every year. 12, emeralds are seldom found in this country, so you should be careful not to misplace your emerald ring. 13, no one would buy a pair of shoes without trying them on. Why should anyone be expected to get married without premarital sex? 14, there are more churches in NYC than in any other city in the nation, and more crimes are committed in NYC than anywhere else. So if we are to eliminate crime, we must abolish churches. 15, every member of the Delta Club is over 70 years old. Therefore, the Delta Club must be over 70 years old. 16, criminals are basically stupid because anyone who isn't basically stupid wouldn't be a criminal. 17, California condors are disappearing rapidly. Therefore, this California condor is disappearing rapidly. 18, corporal punishment is no longer allowed in Virginia schools. This is why children have less self-discipline and respect for authority than in the past. 19, the Book of Mormon is true because it was written by Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith wrote the truth because he was divinely inspired. We know he was divinely inspired because the Book of Mormon says that he was, and the Book of Mormon is true. 20, one person died from a shark bite in the US in 2022. That is why I will stay out of the ocean. Okay, so that was all of your fallacies, and here's the list of them in case you need to consult them when you're doing these practice problems. Please do the practice problems and test your recollection of each type.